Hi everyone. Good morning. It's great to see you. I'm Kathleen Drum and I'm the Director of the Industry Team at TIFF. And as a recent immigrant to Canada, I'm just delighted to be able to welcome you all for the very first time to the TIFF Kids Industry Conference. We're here in the dynamic and culturally diverse city of Toronto, which has a long history stretching back over time. I'd like to pay my respects to the Mississaugas of New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, the original keepers of this land, for hosting us here today and for hosting TIFF year-round. Thank you. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the generosity of our sponsors and partners. The TIFF Kids International Film Festival is supported by the City of Toronto and the Ontario Arts Council. And our industry programming is supported by the Ontario Media Development Corporation, Bell Fund and Canada Media Fund. TIFF is also generously supported by our lead sponsor Bell, major sponsors RBC, L'Oréal Paris and Visa, as well as major supporters the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario and the City of Toronto. We are here at this fantastic conference and at one of the largest children's film festivals in the world. We know that you're here to learn and to be inspired, to broaden your networks and to do business. Over the next few days, you'll gain creative insights and practical tips which will help you deepen your understanding of the industry and gain momentum with your projects. Our smart and hardworking programmer, Lynn Crocker, who literally only started a few weeks ago, has assembled an exceptional lineup of world-class speakers whose experience and insight will help equip you with meaningful tools for success. Thank you, Lynn. You've done an incredible job. And also I want to thank my team who've worked so hard to make this conference happen, Brittany, Gabby and Jeff. Our speakers here have been encouraged not to hold back, to be outspoken on some of the most topical and relevant subjects the industry is contemplating right now. We want you to come away informed, inspired and up to date. We are a multicultural society, and what could be more topical than how children see themselves reflected on screen? How great it is that we're starting today with a session on casting kids and diversity. Our conference program was informed by the help and advice of an amazing bunch of people, our very own TIFF Kids Advisory Committee, who are leaders in the children's screen content industry. They are Jamie Piercarts, Peter Moss, Andrew Rosen, Carl Brunker and Bob Barlin. It was this group who told us they'd love to know more about how children's cognitive development matches up with what they're watching on screen. Constance Steinkuhler from the University of Wisconsin-Madison will explore this today in relation to game-based learning. Women's disproportionately low participation in the sector has been one of the most talked about subjects in the industry. This debate has been fueled by a determination to change the paradigm and some groundbreaking research from Europe and North America, including Rena Fraticelli's inclusive report on the Canadian situation. Incisive report on it's inclusive too. Rena is just one of the outstanding panellists we have lined up this afternoon at Levelling the Playing Field for Women. And we'll end today with an insight into the creative processes that drive storytelling and character at DreamWorks Animation. We are just thrilled and honoured to have DreamWorks co-president of feature animation, Bonnie Arnold, whose outstanding body of work includes How to Train Your Dragon and Toy Story, in conversation with Justin Johnson of the BFI. Yes, there's a lot happening over the next 3 days, and through all this, and while it might seem like a big industry, we know that in fact our industry is comprised of small, interconnected groups of decision makers, and many people know one another. Our business is all about relationships. Build your networks for now and for the future. Please do join us for breakfast each morning and our lunch and learns. Do meetings in the TIFF Kids Industry Lounge, and don't forget our cocktail party tomorrow evening in collaboration with the Canada Media Fund and Eye on Canada. So enjoy the conference, see a few films if you get a chance, visit our award-winning DigiPlay space, do some business, sample the best of the city, the sun is shining out there, and go home with some new friends and contacts. And now it's my privilege to welcome a great friend to TIFF and to the industry. Karen Thornstone, President and CEO of the Ontario Media Development Corporation. Under Karen's leadership, the OMDC has supported the creation and promotion of children's media across film, television, digital media and literature, always encouraging the industry to think and partner in new ways. A very warm welcome to Karen, and thanks everyone. Have a great conference.
Well, thank you, Kathleen, and good morning, everyone. It's certainly fair to say that the OMDC has been a long time and proud supporter of TIFF and all that they do. And we're delighted to partner this week on the TIFF Kids Industry Program. Through its 40 years now, I guess, of existence, TIFF has been providing innovative and thought-provoking industry forums just like this one, and we applaud them for the amazing work that they do, and we're proud to be their partner. I'm sure by now most of you, if not all of you, know OMDC as an agency whose mandate is to help build Ontario's creative economy by investing in music and publishing and interactive digital media and, of course, film and television industries. And I don't think I could have given a better introduction on what we do than Kathleen just did. But I wanted to point out this morning that besides being key to our quality of life, Ontario's entertainment industries are also big business. They're contributing more than $12 billion a year to the GDP in this province. More than 200,000 people are employed in these industries. And our film and television industry just experienced its fifth year in a row over $1 billion. So that's a record for us. And congratulations to all of you for the amazing content that you're making that's finding its way to audiences all around the world. Obviously, we're thrilled by the outstanding performance of our screen sector, and we're confident in saying that Ontario's total package of incentives, government support, competitive financial incentives, world-class infrastructure, talent that you'll hear from over the course of the next few days and that all of you represent, and of course an amazing range of diverse locations really do help us to attract high-end foreign production and investment here, but also helps to ensure a strong and stable domestic industry that is the anchor of our entertainment sector, and that I should say is respected all around the world. Two of Ontario's real strengths, and I don't need to tell any of you this, is our kids' content and our interactive digital media. So it makes a great deal of sense for us to be supporting the TIFF Kids Industry Program, which is designed to bring together people who create interactive content and who create kids' content. And not only does it make sense creatively, it makes sense from a business perspective. We think it's got a tremendous amount of potential. So I hope that your meetings and your sessions over the next couple of days at the forum are productive. I hope it opens doors for you to new partnerships and exciting business opportunities, and of course that you get to see some of our amazing content along the way. So with that, enjoy the festival, and over to Lynn.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Kathleen. Good morning. My name is Lynn. As Kathleen mentioned, I'm the Industry Programming Manager here at TIFF, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to Day 1 of the TIFF Kids Conference. I'm very excited about the programming that we have over the next few days, and I'd like to invite you to join the conversation by tweeting using the hashtag TIFFKidsIndustry. This is the one time that in the Bell Lightbox we encourage you to bring out your cell phones in the theater, so just take advantage of that opportunity, but make sure it's on silent, please. Let's begin with our first panel, Casting Kids and Diversity. The panel is the first of 3 sessions that over the course of the conference will look at casting and acting in children's media. For this session, we have assembled a panel of industry experts who will provide an in-depth look at the business of spotting and cultivating young talent. As well, they will explore the industry's response to growing demand for diversity. I'd like to invite the panelists now to take the stage, and I'll introduce them. Come this way. Our first panelist is Laura Harbin. While she was the director of scripted programming at Temple Street Productions, Laura developed and produced family series Wingin' It, the hit tween series The Next Step, and executive produced the music-based tween series Lost and Found Music. Laura's new production company, Beechwood Canyon Productions, in partnership with Frank Van Keeken, is currently developing and producing its own projects while they continue to exec produce Lost and Found Music. The Next Step. Larissa Mayer is currently the casting director of CBS Paramount for the Canadian casting director for CBS Paramount on 12 of the network's new pilots. Her casting credits include Raising Expectations, starring Jason Priestley and Molly Ringwald, the Canadian flagship series Degrassi Next Class, as well as Odd Squad, Make It Pop, The Kingdom, The Stanley Dynamic, and the made-for-TV movie Bruno and Boots. Daniel Birnbaum is a talent agent. Daniel runs the film and television and youth departments at the Talent House. He prides himself on having a very diverse and busy roster of varying ages, with some of his top clients starring in hit series such as The Other Kingdom, Rain, Heroes Reborn, Make It Pop, Backstage, Lost and Found Music Studios. Wayne Davis. Wayne is a former theater and TV actor who, together with his wife, Megan, work with children in the performing arts at their Thornhill studio, Characters Theater Troupe. He is also the co-artistic director of the City Youth Players, a not-for-profit theater company in the York region. And he is the father of 2 very busy young actors, Millie and Drew Davis. Tyler Murray. Tyler is a professional actor who's performed in many film and television projects, as well as dozens of stage productions, including Les Mis, The Lion King, Dirty Dancing, and The Lord of the Rings. He's made a name for himself assisting directors, working with young performers as an acting and dialogue coach. On the set of some such popular TV series as The Adventures of Napkin Man, The Other Kingdom, Make It Pop, Max and Shred, and My Babysitter's a Vampire. Moderating our panel today is Martin Markle. Martin has over 20 years' experience in the television industry and is currently the Senior Director of Children's Content for Kids CBC, where he oversees projects from development to broadcast, including commissioning original work. Martin's credits include supervising the Gemini Award-winning animated series Dragon Booster, and executive producing The Morgan Waters Show, for which he received a Gemini Award for Best Children's or Youth Program Series. Now I'd like to turn it over to you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to have a great session. Just to tell you how we're going to approach it is, first we're going to chat with the panel about children on screen in general. And then for the second half of the session, we'll dive into diversity. We've got a great deal of clips and photos to show you, and of course, we'll make lots of room for your questions. We're going to jump right in. Wayne, I'd like to start with you. Hi. As you heard, Wayne runs a very successful school for young performers, and I thought it would behoove us to kind of follow the path of a young performer from school to the agent process, casting process, being on a show, which we'll refer to Laura to, and her experience as a producer, and then of course with Tyler, who is an acting coach. So following that thread, let's begin right at the start. I'm curious, in your opinion, what distinguishes kids who pursue acting as a hobby versus those who can make it professionally?
Well, from my experience, I think acting is a lot like any competitive sport or thing that a child participates in. For example, like hockey or dance. If you're going to do something at a high level, there's obviously a large commitment involved in terms of your time, and your natural ability, as well as the training that goes along with it as well. So, for the dancers or the hockey players, it's wanting to be at the rink at 5 o'clock in the morning, or wanting to do 12 hours of dance a week. And it's no different for the young actors as well. It's got to be something that they want to do and that they want to have fun doing, as opposed to something that's their parents are forcing them, or not necessarily forcing, but pushing them towards doing. Ultimately, it comes down to them wanting to do it and to experience that, and us as parents being the ones to help foster that. Comparing those with that want to do it versus the ones that are sort of pushed towards doing it, I think you'll get you get it's completely on both two different ends of the spectrum. You do get both in the industry, unfortunately, but ultimately, I think the ones that are there for the long haul, those are the ones that usually stick it out.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Wayne is the father of two working actors, and it'd be great to actually see their photos now. If we could have the first one, please. Tell us who we're looking at here, Wayne.
That's my little girl, Millie. She is 9 years old, and she's been acting since she was 4. And she had her first actually commercial at 6 months of age with me. But she's been working for quite a while on Odd Squad. She's a lead actor on that, and she's also has a recurring role on Orphan Black. And she does a number of voice animation roles. Wishing Proof, she's also the voice of Pal on a TV show Androids, and a couple of other things. But as I said, she's been working for quite a while.
And let's look at the next one. Your son.
That's my son, Drew. He's 12, and he's been acting since he was 5 as well. His first role was on Rookie Blue. He had a recurring role on that as one of the lead characters' son. And yes, he's been acting for a long time as well. TV, film. He's got a big theatre gig coming up right now, professional theatre gig, and we're off to go train in New York for a few months, hopefully very soon. So he does voice as well. He's the voice of Marshall in Paw Patrol, and he's also the lead in voice for an animated show called Just in Time.
Very impressive. Before we move down the panel, just a final question on this topic. You are an acting coach, and of course you're a parent, and you're now a parent of actors. Was there any hesitation about introducing them to the business? Did you think it might be a burden to, expose them to the world that you knew so well?
I discourage it all the time, actually. My line is normally that it's not for the faint of heart. A lot of it's to do with the amount of rejection that you're possibly going to get, and for kids, it's hard to realize that it doesn't matter how good you are at something; it's always somebody else's decision as to whether you get the role or not, which is always very difficult for them to comprehend. I did my best. I thought I did great, and it went really well. Why didn't I get it? And sometimes it's it's just the way it goes. But going back to my early point that I sort of rambled through, the whole point was that if they want to do it, then it's my job as a parent to be behind them 100% and to give them the tools that they need to succeed. And for those of you that are parents, I'm sure you can relate to that, regardless of what it is that your kids do.
Thank you. We're going to zip over to Daniel on the other side. When you see young kids presented to you by their parents, how do you determine who you will represent?
I think I think it's sort of twofold. The first thing that I always like to do when I bring a child in for a meeting is I like to bring them into our meeting space one-on-one, and I like to engage with the child without the parent in the room. I think it's so important because you are throwing these kids into an industry that is primarily adults, and so you want to know that they're comfortable. You want to know that they can hold themselves in a conversation. I sort of say it's the best precocious behavior. Where they can engage like little adults to a certain degree, but there's still that element of whimsy and play in young kids, and that's always what draws me. Then I usually give them material and I make them read, if they're very, very little, I give them probably about 3 pages. And then as they get older, it goes up to 6, sometimes 10 pages of material. And I usually try and assign that material based on what I see the market is looking for right now. So whether it be one sort of piece that's more adult-centered drama and one piece that's more youth-centered, like a show that you would get on a Family Channel or a Nickelodeon, to see how they can handle the 2 different mediums. And then I bring the parent in, and I interview the parent as well, because that's who I'm going to be dealing with 9 times out of 10. And I want to make sure that we see eye to eye and our expectations are eye to eye, because ultimately it's a relationship-driven industry, and you got to make sure that you feel comfortable with all of those relationships.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to watch a clip now, actually, of one of your clients, Adriana DeLillo. Before we watch the video, do you want to set up who she is?
Sure. So Adriana, when I first met her, she was 9 years old. She was about 4'4" and 110 pounds at the time. So she was quite a heavy little girl. And there was a casting notice that came out for a new sinking ship series called Androids, and they wanted this role to be diverse. And even though she's Caucasian, I picked up the phone and I said, she's a heavy little girl. That's diversity, and that's representing a demographic that's not always on TV. She ended up going in, booking this role. You meet her, you fall in love with her. And then after that series wrapped, she basically walked right into a new series called Backstage, which she just shot season 1 of, which currently airs on Family. So we threw a couple questions to her, and she provided us with some candid answers.
Great, let's take a look at that now. Wow. Yeah, there goes the rest of the panel. The end. Okay, let's flip it to Larissa. Larissa, it's kind of like a winnowing process. Wayne has a school. He teaches thousands. Our agent, Daniel, will winnow that group down to the ones who he feels can make it and book roles. And then, of course, as casting director, you actually get to choose which ones will go forward and be on a show. What process are you using when you are casting a role?
So the process is that I'm actually the middleman. My job is the middleman to understand what the director, the producer, the network, what they want. So what will happen is, we will put out a casting notice throughout the agents. I'm also a huge ambassador of finding fresh faces. So on my website, I'm always encouraging the youth to write in. I get parents to write in. Sometimes I get parents that write in for the youth and they're over 20 years of age. I kind of discourage that. I want them to be an independent, but I'm the middleman, so I'm the one that will get thousands, usually, especially for a series lead, We will get thousands of submissions, and each project is different on how many people I can bring in per role. But I try to bring in as many as possible. I have my own studio, and so we try to discover, especially for a series lead, a fresh face. And we're looking for people when they come into the casting process. We are looking, people have covered this area, but we're looking for people that are disciplined. This is a very hard industry, and especially for our youth, they come in and they go, I want to be a star. You know, television has very much glamorized things, but that people don't really understand, especially our youth, how difficult this industry is. So we are looking for people that, yes, they can come in, they can own the room, they discipline, they study, they train, they have an agent. Sometimes people don't have an agent, but they have studied, they have taken the time. Even if they're really young, they just know how to handle the material and they understand what it is to be in the industry. And, you know, like she mentioned there, when you get on set, we are hiring you. We are not hiring the parent, we are hiring the individual. So the skill set to be on television is in great demand. So I'm looking for people that love it, very passionate. You have to be positive and passionate, and it has to reside. This is what I want to do because it is so difficult, and the rejection is, unfortunately, you're going to hear no more than yes. Did I answer the question? I go on a tangent sometimes.
No, hugely. That was great. Okay, we're going to pass it over to Laura. Laura, you have a couple shows under your belt, successful shows that you cast in a very interesting way. If you could please tell us about that.
Sure. So I'll start with the next step, which is a dance-based show. Basically, we were looking for dancers who were dancing at a very high caliber so that we could lend that authenticity to the show, and then the stories we told would all, because they really come from it. So the first thing we were looking for were amazing dancers. And it got to the point where after a couple of seasons, we even had to raise the bar on the dancing and just say, if you need to come in, you need to know how to do acro. Because the level of dancing had gotten so high. But one of the interesting things I found about that process was, even though we were looking for amazing dancers, what I was looking at was I was looking in their eyes the whole time they were dancing, just to see that they had this openness, because that was the other requirement when they talked to us after the dancing, was just to make sure that they were open and accessible. And being accessible was actually the most valuable thing to us, because then they would be game on set to tell any story that we're telling. The nature of our show is there's a lot of improvisation in the scenes. We lay out what the scenes are going to be about, but the actors actually bring the dialogue to the scene and lend us that authenticity with the handles of the scene of how we get into it before we're into the plot points. So, and then also we did the same, had the same process with Lost and Found Music Studios, which was, again, let's bring in musicians. And the interesting thing about both of those is that dancers are super disciplined, so that was a great attribute that they brought to the show. And the same thing with the musicians. They've been playing for years and years before they came to us. And then we have Frank Van Keeken and I have just started our own production company, and we have a pilot in development that's a horse show. And so we did the same thing. We wanted to see riders of all different disciplines and then talk to them and see what their world was like and why they were passionate about it as well.
Thank you. We're going to have a separate session after about casting horses and how that's done.
Same way.
Now, whoops, oh my goodness. I was afraid I was going to fall off this stool when I started. It almost happened. Okay, we are going to zip over to Tyler. Tyler, please tell us a little bit about what it is you do and some of the techniques you use as an acting coach on set.
So after a child has decided they want to be an actor, and they get an agent, and then they audition, and then they find themselves on set, it's my job to keep the ball rolling, especially in television. Time is money, and we don't always have as much time as we want to get things going. So to make sure that the children, or any of the actors really, arrive prepared for the day. We could shoot sometimes 20 pages a day, 5 days a week. And when you're a young, fresh face, and you finally get on a TV set and you think you're going to be a huge star, but that's not going to happen for another year. Now you have months of work ahead of you, of the 5 days a week, learning the pages, and then as soon as you finish the scene, it's gone. Next scene. A lot of the times they can find that very daunting. It's very surprising to them, just the amount of work that has to happen. And a lot of times they find it surprising that there are, as she said, 200 people watching you when you just thought it was going to be the director, the camera, and yourself. And that's not at all the case. So what I like to do is I try to make the kids feel as comfortable as possible. We'll arrive in the day, in the morning, and we'll go through the scenes for the day. Hopefully we can get a chance to run through all of the scenes for the day first thing, but oftentimes that's not the case. So we'll just go as quickly as we possibly can. Sometimes it's just me and the one actor while the other one's getting her makeup done, and then while she's getting her hair done, I'll move to this actor and try to play all the parts. So it's a matter of keeping the material fresh, making sure they know their lines. First and foremost, know your lines. If any of you are working with any young actors, tell them to learn their lines. And then they can focus on telling the story. Because if you're sitting there going, oh, what's the next line, what's the next line? The story is gone because the camera just picks up the fact that you're trying to remember what comes next and not telling the actual story, what's going on behind their eyes, as you were saying. So I just try to keep it light and friendly, and if there's any other stresses about time or whatnot, I try to keep the actors separate from that and just focus on the story and keeping it a relaxed day.
Excellent, thank you. And we actually have a sample of Tyler's work. We're going to look at now a video of The Adventures of Napkin Man and a young star in there, Luca Assad, who, of course, Tyler mentored.
Yes, a little bit.
He coached the hamster as well.
Yeah.
That kind of emotion from that
Nothing
little
like a
creature
horse.
doesn't come
Trust
from
me,
anywhere,
doesn't. Yeah.
people. Not from PJ's
But
Pet Store.
Luca is an excellent example of an actor. She was 6 years old, and she would show up, and she would know all her lines. She would know all Yannick's lines, and she would know what I was going to tell her before I even told her, which was not much because she was prepared. Whereas there was other children on that set who I would have to literally stand beside the camera and feed the next line, and feed the next line. Whereas Luca, she was a rarity. She was amazing. Yeah.
You should have said your work was amazing with Luca, and it was all you. That's what we agreed upon before the panel.
It was mostly me, but she had a little bit of talent.
I'm kidding. No,
Yeah.
she's fantastic. And let's flip now to some of the difficulties that kids can run into on set. In particular, children who begin acting at a young age and then continue in the business. And I'm curious to know how their experience changes. Larissa, we're going to start with you.
I find sometimes when a child becomes a series lead and then the show is over. And I always encourage people, especially after being a series lead, a few things. Be a business, make sure to get a financial advisor, because after a year, you definitely want to figure out how to deal with the future. But I find after being a series lead, sometimes the work will stop. And I've seen it time and time again. And sometimes the work stops because they're too recognizable on television and people wanting to find fresh faces. So I do encourage those people to continue their classes. It's unfortunate sometimes they feel because I've been a series lead, I don't need to continue my training. They get this massive sense of entitlement. And I think entitlement is getting, unfortunately, progressively worse sometimes, especially with our youth and our teenagers. So it's still continuing our training. I mentioned also when you're a lead or when you're in the television, continue to be more worldly. Find other things that you can focus on. Also have something as a backup. But I think it's really tough for them when they finish and they're not sure what to do when the phone stops ringing. So it can be very discouraging, and they go through different cycles on how to deal with that rejection.
Thank you. Okay, let's flip now to what is a reality of the business, and that sometimes you've got to change cast members and even let young actors go. So we're going to start with Tyler, and then we're going to go to Laura. Tyler, what is it like when you're working with young actors and a change needs to be made in terms of their roles?
I think anytime a change needs to be made to a role, no matter what the age of the actor, it's heartbreaking. But especially with a young person, not everybody has that sparkle behind their eye that, say, Luca had. And especially when you see something like that, it's so special, and you're able to, everything just falls into place. And when you see a young talent and they've got the right look and everything's great, and they show up to set and they can't remember the lines, they don't want to be there. They don't want to be there. That's a big thing, and I find that's maybe with the parents as well. Sometimes they're because they're so cute in the living room or whatever, that song they sang for grandma, they're pushed into it, or they're encouraged to do something that they're not necessarily comfortable doing. And I remember an example of a young guy who just, the audition was fantastic and his mom was there and encouraging him the whole time, but when he got to set and mom had to sit outside in the waiting room, he couldn't deliver, and we were going to lose 2 days worth, and something that had to be shot in half a day, it would have taken us 2 days, and we just couldn't do it. So unfortunately, a tough decision had to be made. And it's just a matter of, can we get the shots? And if we can't, then something has to change.
And the decision was?
We replaced that actor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you take it?
I wasn't there for that part, so part of the beauty of being an on-set acting coach is I get to do all the fun stuff and keep it light and entertaining, and when the unfortunate things like that have to happen, I'm usually not in the room. So,
Laura, you were telling me that you actually have I think, very supportive way of parting ways with actors on your shows. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, well, our cast is an ensemble. I think it's even tough for them during the process of the season as they see the scripts coming out and who's getting higher profile roles and, what story threads we're following. But, we've managed to, I guess, in the fourth season, bring back at least 3 first season casts that hadn't really appeared, but they came back in guest roles. We've also had many of the cast come in and audition to sing on our songs, because we have a lot of songs in our show, and we did have Tamina Pollock-Paris, who was in the first season and not profiled much after that. She sang on a song that's still playing in the fourth season and was on the live tour, so it was kind of a neat thing for her. It wasn't something that she had done before. And in the fourth season, we had a couple of the actors direct and do choreography. So we're just trying to keep them sort of involved if they showed an interest in different aspects of the business, just to try and mentor them a little bit in those directions if maybe their roles on the show weren't as big as they had been in other seasons.
That's great. And I think we'll take a look now at a video of The Next Step, which is one of Laura's shows. And you could see, she mentioned these people were cast because they were dancers, but you'll see the quality of their acting is quite excellent. Let's look at that, please. Enjoying the show. Very impressive.
One thing with casting for our youth, usually when it's near the end of finding a lead, we usually do in a delicate way pre-screen the parents. And one disappointment I just want to mention, 2 years ago, was very heart-wrenching in that we did find a series lead. But during the table read in the beginning of the process of the show, when we were filming, the mother constantly was mentioning to the other parents how her daughter should have had more lines. Her daughter should have had a bigger part. She should have been doing this and that, and started not being a team player with the other parents. And unfortunately, in the early stages, the girl got fired because of her mother. And for me, it was, I want to cry now. It was horrible for this girl. So part of the casting process is screening the parents. So if there's parents out there, it's your job to really be supportive and nurturing and to be a team player with everyone involved. Scene.
Can I just mention, so that was Brittany Raymond and Trevor Torgman, and Brittany was just a tiny wisp of a girl when she came in and auditioned, and the first season, the cast were all, did you cry today? Like, they were like, some of them had to cry, and it was a big deal if any of them got to cry. And you said that you showed the cast, though, some of Brittany crying, I think, just to show them, don't worry, that you can get there. And that was her first season, and then that was the end of the third season where the two of them are in the relationship that sort of carries through the whole series. But they're both amazing at emotional scenes and funny scenes and amazing dancers as well. So they've just really, there was a spark in the two of them that Frank saw early on that maybe they could be a relationship, and it just carried through the whole seasons, all of them, yeah.
As I look at my watch, we are nearing the end. I want to talk about diversity, and then, if we can, get some questions from the audience. But there was a great line you told me that Frank had said, and Frank Van Keeken, the director, is sitting in the front row, a line he used to help the actors on set reach their heights in acting. Can you tell us what that was?
Well, I think for the most part, Frank tries to let them know that once they've been hired, they're glorious, they're already here, they're amazing, and just go for it, and don't worry that if there's any bad bits, we're going to cut them out. Like, don't worry about failing. We will only keep the good parts. And I think once the cast started to see that, that they relaxed into the roles and they really went for it in the emotional scenes, in the funny scenes, in the heartfelt scenes, everything. They really were able to open up and go for it because they knew they were safe.
That's helpful. Okay, we're going to switch to diversity now and make sure everyone gets a chance to chat. Daniel, we're going to start with you. We haven't heard from you in a while. How are you seeing the importance of diversity now as an agent?
I think it's hugely important. It's something that the industry is continually hungry for at this point. We live in a country that is incredibly diverse, and we want to see that represented on camera. So they are continually hungry for not only new faces, but new faces that maybe represent a demographic they don't see all the time. Certainly when you turn on any TV show, you do sort of see the count of non-Caucasians gradually increasing on all of these programs, especially with the youth stuff, because it's so important that as young people, you sit and watch a program and you feel like you are represented and that you're relating to the characters you see on camera. And so, you even look at something like a Degrassi, which has now been on for 12 years? 26. Well, 20, but I mean, sorry, the next generation. Years. I'm talking solely the next generation.
I'm now in menopause. Yeah.
But what you notice is if you look back to season 1 of the next generation, the issues and the demographic of the student body at the school has become quite transformative until now, where they are, they do have plot lines involving new refugees or all sorts of different types of people that you didn't get even 10, 12 years ago. So it's certainly something I always feel hungry for too, in terms of who I'm representing. I love diversity, and I love the underdog, as I call it. So I think I was explaining, I rep the only two young people in the industry with Down syndrome who are actors. And to me, like, that is the prime example of diversity in so many ways, because it's not even something that is on the industry's radar half the time. So half the time, I'm picking up the phone, calling casting, just trying to bang down a door because it's not the type of diversity that casting is even on casting's radar to start looking for.
That's impressive. We're going to switch it to Wayne. Your children are succeeding in the business right now, and actually it's a great time to pull up the remaining two photos. Could we get the one of Drew with Ethan Hawke, please? What film or TV show is this?
That's actually, that's actually from Born to Be Blue. It's actually playing here now. I think the scene was actually cut, to be honest, because, but he's actually playing Ethan's son, and they have a really heartfelt scene. This was filmed up in Sudbury, and they have a really great scene together, and it was a really fun couple of days that we spent up there in Sudbury. Anyone from Sudbury? Well, it wasn't really much fun in Sudbury, but it was fun being there.
Wow.
So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't offend anyone. Oh, sorry, Sudbury, sorry. Love Sudbury.
And let's take a look at the second photo, which is Drew and Millie with some faces you might recognize.
That's
Forrest Whitaker and Eva Longoria. I'd like to add, in case you're worried, he's not bleeding. He's not really bleeding. He's okay.
Yes, that was during one of the breaks we had in an action scene. Wait, that was in Sudbury as well. Yeah, that was, yes. That was Millie when she was 4 or 5, and Drew would be 3 years older than that. And yes, we actually got to go and film in the Dominican Republic as well, which was great, having my kids being shot at and running through the jungle, being chased by military people.
Sorry, was that the movie or just your vacation
that's
there?
Just our vacation. That's our vacation. We didn't have a visa, no.
Try Orlando next time.
Yes. So yeah, they get to have a lot of fun, and they've had a lot of fun, and they've got to do a lot of traveling, and they've got to work with some really great people as well. And Eva and Forrest they were great people to work with.
So an important question for you, because Wayne is a performer and was an active performer before your children were born. Can you compare and contrast for us what it was like for you when you were acting and auditioning and how the scene was versus now when your children are going out as it relates to diversity?
Funny enough, I always said I was going to get a hat or a T-shirt that had the letters TBG on it as the token black guy or the token black girl, because there's always one. And my motto used to be, well, if there's going to be one, it might as well be me. That was just to say that there wasn't really much going on at the time. And this is 15 years ago or so. And I'd always run into the same people at auditions. We'd have a great time at the auditions. It was always a laugh. But at the end of the day, on a serious note, there wasn't really much for us. England is a different story. They've always they were a bit ahead of the game in terms of casting more diversely. But I think we're sort of catching up in North America. You have a lot of shows right now that are featuring primarily people of color, for example, in lead roles, and that's a great thing to see. And I think we're sort of leading that way. To go with what Daniel said, your shows need to represent what the real world looks like. And the real world, even in this room, if you look around, is made up of a lot of people, different colors, different ethnic backgrounds, different sizes, and that needs to be represented on the screens that we all watch.
Absolutely. We're going to look at a couple clips that Larissa brought in. First, the one from Odd Squad, and then following that, Degrassi. But Larissa, just as a way of setting them up, could you let us know from your casting perspective what you're seeing in scripts and producers' requests?
I think the initial conversation is always that we're seeking diversity and representation of every culture, and that I find over the past couple of years is integral at the beginning and early stages, and so it's my job to find those people. And so I just think it's just a conversation that we're always trying to find the right piece in the puzzle and to to have all culture groups. So it's tough to elaborate, because it's just a critical thing and something that's so important that we need on our television. So I love that it's imperative and it's part of our initial stages of casting.
As a measure of Larissa's success, let's watch the clips, starting with the Odd Squad, please. Perspective, we actually have in-house, we have a department of accessibility, inclusion, and diversity working to normalize the representation of what we see and hear. And we also have some targeted groups who we're trying to encourage and bring in, both as employees at the CBC and show creators and casting, every aspect of production. Currently, we are trying to encourage and welcome women, indigenous people, visible minorities, people with disabilities, and the LGBT community. Towards this, we have workshops and match-ups. I've attended many of these where we invite all of these targeted groups where people can meet CBC executives and hopefully form those relationships and get that insight that can result in content being created, more diverse content. I'd love to take a few questions from the audience. I don't know if there's a mic. I don't know how we do it. Oh, there is one. Does someone have a question for the panel?
Lately, I've been pitching, and diversity's come up a couple times in a couple pitches. One was primetime, one was children's. So I didn't write the characters with any diversity in my mind as a writer. So how do I help this situation? Because they said, well, they're not diverse, and because they had Caucasian names. I just didn't write Amir, or I wrote Jane and John and Bob and Larry and all those kind of names just when I was making them up. So they said they're not diverse characters. So in the writing, obviously, the diversity wasn't there. So maybe you could answer how I write diversity into the script. I just sort of thought the casting directors would sort of do it, or I didn't have any preconceived notion they were Caucasian, what their nationality was in that case. In the second case, too, I have a historic character. And they said, well, why don't we make him East Indian? Well, historically, he's not East Indian. So that was, as a writer, I was put off also because of that. Oh, what was my stance on the fact that I had a historical character that was that changing history? Is that cultural appropriation in another way? Because it's a historical Canadian character that wouldn't have been that nationality.
Well, that's a very good question. I think ultimately, when the CBC or any other broadcaster is acquiring shows from many show creators, the idea is that over the course of all the shows that we acquire, we're going to hit those different diverse targets, which is different than saying every single show must have every single thing in it. I think just looking at the CBC schedule recently, I mean, we had Book of Negroes in prime time with obviously historically and sensibly, a lot of black actors. And we also show Heartland, which is principally a white cast. So I think it's having both is what's valid. You are a woman show creator, so that is fantastic. If you're looking to expand your scripts to include characters with diverse backgrounds, I would say find a writer who's from that background, as opposed to you changing their names. Find a partner, find a few partners who can bring those diverse voices to your work.
There's just to further that, there's a great article I read. I don't remember if it was Deadline or which sort of media hub it came through, but it was all about the industry and this whole idea of colorblind casting and how the industry is actually desiring something called color conscious casting, which basically means if the circumstances do not inform the ethnic background of the character, we should be open to seeing a very wide demographic of diversity. So if you're doing Book of Negroes, yes, of course, you would not cast a white person as a slave in Africa. That would be offensive, right? So yes, that would inform that choice, and that has to be a black actor. Whereas if the script does not call for it, we have to be conscious of the idea that we're looking for a really widespread ethnic demographic.
And one final thought on that question is, because I oversee the children's department, a lot of what we deal with is animation. And we had an experience just this year where there was an existing show with a lead animated female character. And from when I started and when my production executive started, she was just drawn white. And through internal discussions, we just said, make her brown. And we told the producer, and they're doing that. So when that particular show comes out, it's called Lazoo, you're going to see a brown-skinned lead character just because we asked for it to be. Now, I'd like to ask some more questions, but I just want to check with our time. Are we okay? Anybody? Yes? Thumbs up? Great. Sir, you've got a question.
So you covered before when, let's say you write someone off a show and how to deal with the child and help them deal with the fact that they're not playing that character anymore. But what about earlier on when you're dealing with, let's say, a kid who comes to callbacks and isn't going to get the role in the end? Is there any way you deal with that, or do you just reject them the same way you would reject any actor?
I think that's kind of on me as an agent to help navigate. My whole philosophy as a representative is to feel like I'm never setting up a young person to fail. So I think this industry is hard on young people, and I feel like what I always say is if the kid sets themselves up for success or through parents and support, then they can walk out of an audition regardless of the outcome feeling 110% about the work they did. The nature of the industry 9 times out of 10 is you don't hear anything unless it's good news or unless it's extremely bad news. So, if a kid walks into the room and then bombs the audition, I get a phone call. If the kid walks into the room and aces the audition, I get a phone call. Anything through the middle, it sort of is just a neutral territory. That said, if it gets right to the end, of course, me as a representative, I'm going to want to know what happened or where the disconnect was and follow up as well. And sometimes, most of the time, if the kid gets right to the end, I always try and assure them in knowing that usually getting to the end means they're doing all the right things, and the reason that role did not go their way is something that ultimately is out of their control. Whether it be, they had the wrong hair color, or they were an inch too tall compared to the boy that they were falling in love with, and it's the romantic leading girl, and they were too tall. These are all things that a young person, an adult actor, cannot control. And so as long as you can walk out of the room feeling that your work was 100% successful, that's all you really need, because then it's only a matter of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I do, as a parent, that's my job as well, is to set them up for the success and also to help them with the failure as well. And I think, as Daniel's saying, you can control the things that you have control over. So are you prepared? Did you have a good night's sleep? Are you, going to go in there with a great look on your face and a smile? Are you going to have fun in a room while you're auditioning? And if the answer is yes, and you go in and you do your part, then anything that happens after that is out of your control. And as we know, sometimes the good things do happen, but on the other side, sometimes you don't get it, even if you get way to the end. There's always the next thing, and as long as you keep, swinging for the fences, well, you get there eventually.
And I always feel it's my job. You mentioned the word rejection, but I feel in my casting room, it's not an organic environment to come into a stale room and audition and then bring everything to life. So I always feel, and one thing I think I'm really proud of is that making people feel special, supporting them, nurturing, being positive. It's especially with our youth. But it's also my job to make sure that they're prepared and they know that this is a tough business, and to know that this is a hard work. It's not easy, and you're not coming in to be a volunteer. You're coming in for a job. And I want to make sure that I'm finding the right person for the right job.
And I think just to sort of top off that, I'm always constantly reminding my talent and their parents, more often than not, no one in this industry is against them. Right? If you get into the room, it's because everyone, when you walk into that audition, everyone is hoping that you are the one. It makes their job so much easier, whether it be producers, whether it be casting, whoever it is, they want every single person to be successful. So you sort of have to go in with that mind frame that even if you don't get the job, it's not a rejection, it's just not the right timing.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll have some closing statements. Did someone have a question for the panel? Sir?
I was just curious to know, in terms of the diversity, do you find parents, or even in your experience personally, that you're not comfortable with the role that's being portrayed? Like maybe it's a diverse situation that maybe doesn't fit with your values personally or with the parents' values. Because I know some adult actors that I know step away from roles because they're like, I don't want to be portrayed that way. Like I'm not cool with it. So just wondering if some parents pull their kids out or, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, usually you get the audition material, and before you audition for anything, you know what you're going in for. So that's the point to say yes or no. I remember coaching a young actress on an audition. The part was called for a 12-year-old, but the part was a 12-year-old prostitute. And I remember asking the mom, "Are you okay with this?" It was a very uncomfortable coaching situation, actually, but you have to look at that material and say, okay, because if you get the role and then you say, "I'm not okay with this," then you've wasted a lot of people's time, which is time is money, right? So you've wasted a lot of time. So it's something that you have to look at when you first get the material.
I think, too, as a representative, I sort of recognize that it's not a dictatorship, it's like a dialogue. And so if a parent were to come back at me saying, I'm not comfortable with my child doing this, it's always, okay, well, let's talk about it, right? Whether it be Caucasian or any sort of other ethnicity, there's always going to be roles and situations that come up in casting that will compromise people's moral bottom line. And it's always about navigating that dialogue. I remember I had a kid whose parent didn't want the child. The kid was like 11 or 12, and the parent didn't want them to be around swearing on set. And I said, well, then you're in the wrong industry, right? Because no matter how much we try and control that environment, sometimes it happens. And so it's always about navigating that bottom line and figuring out where those comfort levels lie. And if I represent a young person, I believe in their ability. And if the role's not right for them, why would I send them in for the role when ultimately I know it's just going to blow up and be a disaster in the end anyway?
I've turned down Millie auditioning for something because of the language. It was just, she was too young and I didn't need those words coming out of her mouth. And I've also turned down something for Drew, not because of language, because of content. And the content was playing a role about dispelling the myth of Santa. And I couldn't have him do that. So we turned down the audition for that as well. So, it can be for simple things, but I don't do it often. I'm not picky in that regard, but there are obviously when you get to a point where you need to make a choice as far as it affects your family or you as an actor, then, you sort of just have to stick to your guns and just, turn it down.
It's no different than, I've had boys who are 16, 17 turn down roles because the role is gay and they're not comfortable kissing another boy. And I recognize that, at 16, some boys are not comfortable enough with their heterosexuality even to then play homosexual on camera, right? And so it's all a sliding scale. It's all every single situation that could be compromising, I guess, is a dialogue. And it's sort of making sure that we flip over every stone and answer every possible question so that they either walk in feeling comfortable or we just really go, we've explored this as much as we can. You're not going to bend. You're not comfortable. Let's not waste time.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is to get a very quick final comment from the first four, and then I've got something special to ask you about. Yes, well, I want to end on a good note, and I know Wayne's got a good story we haven't spoken about. It's not about Santa, don't worry, because I don't want these people to think he doesn't exist. If you could just give a piece of advice to young actors, how you would guide them, what's the most important thing they need to know, or the parent of a young actor, what's the best thing they can do, really quickly, so the audience can take that with them, starting with Daniel.
I think my biggest thing is it's supposed to be fun. Young people don't have mortgages. They don't have overhead. They don't have the financial stress that an adult does. And so if at any point they're no longer having fun, we need to readdress. And so ultimately, they need to wake up every day excited that they have an audition and excited to go throw themselves into that mix and hope for the best.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, I guess for the cast, it's just, to show up and to be yourself and to throw yourself into it. Because just quickly, I'll tell you, we had a cast member who was in the pilot in the lead role, and she didn't get that in the series. She got a more minor role, but she kept showing up and impressing us. And, the role that she's in now eclipsed the original role that we had in the show. So just keep showing up and do what you do.
I think for parents and for the actor, they have to ask themselves why they're there. Is it to be a famous movie star? I had one child said, I can't rehearse right now. My Twitter followers need me. After vomiting, I quickly told her that she was going to actually put the phone down and come rehearse. But there are some people who want to be stars, and that's fine. That's okay. But you can't become a star until you're willing to put, or you're able to put in your 8 hours of work every day, showing up, knowing your stuff, and if your role gets diminished, still showing up and putting in the work. And if you have more responsibility, accepting that. There's too many people who just want the end game and they want their faces on E-Talk Daily or whatever, walking the red carpet, when it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than I think a lot of even adult actors consider. So they really need to ask themselves why they want to be there. And once they've done that, have fun, like Daniel said.
I always say a lot of people want to be in the business, but to be in the business is to know the business. And a lot of people come into the room and they do not know anything about the industry. And especially being in Canada, especially if I'm casting a theater show too, they're not aware of any Canadian theaters, Canadian directors. We're in Canada, so I like to highlight that. But to be in the industry, to be in the business is to know the business. So really take time to network, to train, to understand the show you're auditioning for, who you're auditioning for. Really take the time to educate yourself. And I always say, when you come into my room, remember that I need you more than you need me. And I want you to succeed, and I want you to get the job. And if it doesn't happen, something else will transpire.
Very positive, thank you. Now, Wayne, the special question I wanted to ask you is, you had told me that Millie had received a lot of fan mail and a lot of positive affirmation about her role, and not only her excellence, but of course in presenting just a fabulous face of diversity. I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Yes, through her work on Odd Squad, she gets a lot of fan mail from kids all over North America. And one of the things that sort of touches my heart about the whole thing is that when the fact that kids are actually writing in, and it's their parents are obviously facilitating, putting the stamp on the envelope, but when you get handwriting from a 6-year-old and it actually gets to your door, and they're saying that they're happy to see you on the screen and that you look like them. that really makes your heart swell. So I'd like to say it's not a lot to make a cast diverse. From my point of view, I think it would be pretty much a headache to have to think about, how do I make this, make this good for everyone. But know that the end result of it has a very positive, is very positive. When your audience, particularly if you're looking at children as your audience, when they see themselves, that inspires them to be, like the person that they see. So Millie plays a very strong character on Odd Squad, and she's a female, and so it empowers, girls, empowers girls of color, empowers people of color. It's a win-win-win. You can't lose at all, and I think that's the most gratifying thing that I found from this whole process, from being on TV and film.
What a fantastic place to end. Thank you to the panel, and thank you to TIFF Kids for hosting us. Thanks for the audience for joining, and hopefully our conversation today will inspire you to go out and create some amazing, diverse, and inspirational content.
Well, I'd just like to thank you all once again for joining us today. I think this was an excellent way to start the conference, so thank you so much. Everyone, there are some refreshments in the lobby, and we will be clearing the house to prepare for our next session. So please join us again at noon for our session on game-based learning with Constance Steinkühler. Thank you.